So, with no more, if anyone has any questions for the performers. Oh yeah, let's see it.
Sure.
So please, floor's up.
After you've written your novel in a month, do you proceed en masse to publish them, or what do you do with them?
If you look at the National Novel Writing website, which is nanowrimo.org, you can see lists of people who've actually gotten their novel published. Sarah Gruen, who wrote Water for Elephants, one of her first novels was a NaNoWriMo book and was published. Most of us just put them in the drawer. Although many of us who do NaNoWriMo I've published 9 books, a lot of us are authors and you know, work to get things published. Did you want to add?
What I've been told, 7 years start to finish. So from the day you write your first word to the day you publish, average time 7 years. The book I read tonight was last year's novel. This is the first I looked at it. What I've been working on this year is the one I wrote 3 years ago. And it's nowhere near published.
I just did this by the seat of my pants last year, and you know, I thought I was going to be like bold and outrageous and just publish it raw, call it NaNoWriMo Raw, and then you know I chickened out, and but I don't know what to do with it. You know, I think I'm going to do NaNoWriMo again this year, but I think this year with purpose. Last year I just wrote and just watched what happened, and that was really fun. But I don't have a clue how to make it into a novel. It's just wild and different. And that's the end of that. All right then. Any of you guys going to do the NaNoWriMo thing? Yeah. Yay! Yeah. It's really fun if you want anybody to razz you.
More questions?
I have a question for Derek, just kind of about the structure of your book. It sounded like some of the poems were kind of personal narratives, but then it sounded like others were like family myth or something. I'm just wondering what was what, or was I confusing what was what, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because the book is set into 4 sections, and I would say section 1 and well, actually it's my own voice sort of visits the narrative throughout, but I'd say it's most heavily obvious in the first and last section. And then there's a section that's sort of dedicated to my grandfather, where there's a long poem. And then section 3 is sort of dedicated to my uncles, and there's a lot of uncle poems. But it's interesting, I was telling my wife this the other day that I can't wait to work on my 3rd book, because that'll be the time where I'll get the opportunity to visit sort of my own voice more than I have. There's a lot of personas in this book, Cotton, and there are a lot of personas in the new manuscript that I'm working on. So I feel like, where do I fit into all of this, right? But I'm much more, at this point, I've been much more interested in persona, because you get to assume the voice and personality of people that are a lot more cooler than you are. Well, for me, a lot more cooler than I am, right? So with my grandfather, you know, I never had the opportunity to meet him, but I had this romantic image in my head. I've seen a picture, right? And I'm like, wow, that guy was cool. Like, that's where I come from, you know? So to get the opportunity to reimagine these voices and these characters, I've been much more interested in doing that than I have been my own personal narrative. Okay.
I have a question for our musical maestro. With everybody like being able to access your music any way they want to, you said online, anybody can pick it up. What's the incentive to keep making CDs?
That's a good question, actually. I'm putting out a CD in a month, actually a live record with some other friends, and we were kind of talking about that, because CDs are in general on the way out. You know, it's all going to be digital, it's all going to be iTunes and all of that probably very soon. I've always liked actually holding CDs. I actually really like holding vinyl records a lot too. And I don't know, I mean, I'm going to keep making them as long as there's somebody who will buy them. But yeah, I mean, in general, it's on the way out, I think, making CDs. So really there isn't much incentive. You're not, you're not making much of the money back, but unless you're selling in huge bulk, which nobody besides Lady Gaga is. It's true.
Well, this question is for Derek. Could you tell us about your educational background, and do you go read your poetry in high schools to inspire young people?
I haven't as much recently. Recently, I've been reading more so in bookstores and bars. But the background is, as Nick mentioned, I did an undergraduate degree at Milwaukee, University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and then an MFA in creative writing poetry at Chicago State University, where Quaritch, those of you that are familiar with Quaritch Monson, where he teaches. He was actually my thesis advisor back in '06. And then I went to the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee for a PhD in English, emphasis creative writing. Now I'm on the last leg of that right now.
Another question for Derek. How do you go about, who do you have published? I mean, do you self-publish? Do you solicit?
The way the process has worked for me is I started submitting to literary journals. It's funny, I started off as like a slam poet in the early part of this, century, early 2000s, right? So competing. I wasn't very good on the page back then, right? So it took those years of workshopping and these school experiences, right? To sort of get my work on the page more clean and more refined. So the way the process started is me submitting to literary journals. For years I got no's, cleaned it up, started getting some yeses. After publishing in some of these journals, one journal in particular, Reverie, they asked if I had a manuscript. They said they accepted 2 or 3 poems and they said, hey, I know you have a manuscript, we want to see it. We're interested in publishing your entire book, right? So I'm like, yeah, I have a manuscript, but I didn't have a manuscript. But if you want a book, I can get you a book, right? So I we went through sort of this dance for about 6 months where I'm like, I'm just still revising, give me a month or 2, and I'll get you the manuscript. When finally they got the manuscript and we worked through it in Queries Press / Willow Books and publishing copy.
Any other questions? No. Thank you.